Carol Burnett tells us the 5 worst people in Hollywood. For over 50 years, Carol Burnett has been America's favorite funny lady. She's the red-haired star with a bright smile, a great laugh, and amazing talent. She became a huge TV star. Her famous variety show, The Carol Burnett Show, was on for 11 years and won 25 Emmy Awards. This made her a legend forever. But behind that nice smile and her habit of tugging her ear is a very strong lady. She has had to deal with the bad and scary side of Hollywood. During her amazing career, Burnett has met people who hurt her deeply. Some hurt her feelings, others hurt her work. Carol may be sweet, but she's not weak, said a former CBS boss who worked with her. She has a great memory. She doesn't just remember her comedy acts. She remembers how people acted when they wanted fame, power, or money. People close to her say she has a private list in her mind of people in show business who were not just mean, but truly evil. She is always graceful and positive in public, but sometimes she has hinted at these names. And tonight, we are sharing the 5 people Carol Burnett thinks are the most scary and mean she ever met in Hollywood. Hollywood looks shiny and happy, but it can hide bad things. Carol Burnett saw that truth, even though she is charming and hopeful. Some people she really disliked were very different in private than they were in public. The first name on that list is Joe Hamilton, the husband who took her work. When Carol Burnett married Joe Hamilton in 1963, it seemed perfect. Hamilton was a producer and music director. He worked with her before and knew the business well. As the producer of her show, he seemed like her biggest helper. He worked hard to make her ideas real. They were a powerful couple on TV before anyone called them that, said a former CBS boss. Joe knew how to make the show, and Carol was the creative star. Together, they were amazing. For almost 20 years, their marriage looked like a Hollywood dream, a couple who did well at work and at home. They had 3 daughters and a perfect-looking family. They mixed love, family, and fame easily. But Burnett found out the truth was much worse. A former CBS business person said Hamilton secretly started his own company. He took ownership of shows that came from her show, like Mama's Family **. While acting like her loyal partner, he was making companies to take control of her creative work. This betrayal hurt more than any professional problem. The truth about Joe Hamilton's plan came out during their divorce in 1984. Court papers showed his scheme. Hamilton had made sure he could own the creative things from her show, including characters Burnett created. The Mama's Family * thing was the biggest shock, said a lawyer who knew the case. The character Mama, played by Vicki Lawrence, came from sketches on Burnett's show. Carol helped create those sketches with her cast. But when Mama's Family became its own show, Hamilton had set it up so his company owned and controlled it. What looked like business was really a quiet theft of Burnett's creative life's work. But the professional betrayal was only part of it. People who worked with the couple said Hamilton's lies went into their personal life too. He hid money, he cheated, and when she found out he just said, "It's business, not feelings," said an accountant who saw their fights. That cold comment showed Burnett and everyone his true self. The man who was her partner had really been a secret planner all along. The divorce was long and public. Burnett was in a big legal fight. She had to protect her money and fight for her creative rights, her characters, and her artistic self. It was very painful in her heart and her work. She had to fight for the legacy she built herself. What hurt Carol Burnett most wasn't the end of her marriage. It was learning that the man she trusted had been using that trust all along. It wasn't the divorce that broke her, said a longtime friend. It was knowing the person she loved, the father of her kids, had been planning how to make money from her talent the whole time. That kind of betrayal was worse than normal human mistakes. For Burnett, whose childhood was hurt by adult lies, Joe Hamilton's actions felt like the past happening again. Trust became a tool, her openness became a weapon, and love was just manipulation. The whole thing made her not want to mix business with personal relationships ever again, said a former cast member. Joe wasn't just her husband. He was supposed to protect her creative work while she made the art. Finding out he was secretly setting up ways to control and profit from her work was like finding out your bodyguard has been robbing you the whole time. That is why Joe Hamilton's name is high on her list. He is a symbol of betrayal in her personal life and her work. A man who spent 20 years pretending to be devoted while quietly planning to own her legacy. But Hamilton wasn't the only one who hurt her. Next on the list is the comedy legend who embarrassed her in front of her whole cast. Harvey Korman, the trusted friend who ignored her for almost 10 years. For years, Korman worked right with Burnett as a key part of her show. His great timing ability to play any role and his famous loud laugh helped make some of TV's best funny moments. To fans, Carol and Harvey seemed like best friends. A perfect comedy team built on friendship and respect. Behind the laughs, that friendship was real, but one shocking event changed everything and put Korman on Burnett's private list of betrayals. Harvey Korman had been Carol Burnett's most trusted co-star, her creative partner, said a former director. They were always together, they made each other better, always laughing and working together. You could tell they really liked each other. Their bond was strong off camera, too. They spent time together, shared secrets, and helped each other through hard times. Burnett had helped Korman's career a lot. Carol was always Harvey's biggest supporter, said a former writer. She asked for more money for him, let him direct, and made sure people noticed him. She treated the cast like family, and Harvey was like a brother to her. That's why what happened next shocked everyone who saw it. People on the crew said their warm partnership started to fall apart in the later seasons. As Korman got more famous, he got a bigger ego. Small creative disagreements turned into real anger. He just exploded, said a stage manager who saw it happen. He yelled on set not just at the crew but right at Carol. It was in public, it was cruel, and he meant to embarrass her in front of everyone. People there said the fight was more than an argument, it was a planned power move. During a big sketch practice, Korman reportedly questioned Burnett's leadership, made fun of her ideas, and said her show was successful despite her, not because of her. It felt like he was trying to take over, said a camera operator. It wasn't a sudden fight, it felt planned, but he didn't know that everyone else on that set loved Carol. He was starting a fight he couldn't win. That moment broke one of TV's favorite partnerships and put Harvey Korman on Carol Burnett's list of betrayals. What made it so painful for Carol wasn't just what he said, but how he did it. The embarrassment was on purpose and in public. A planned move to challenge her power in front of everyone instead of talking in private. That public show, her friends said, showed Carol who Korman really was under his charm and laughs. She fired him right then, recalled a former production assistant. I never saw Carol act so sure. She didn't yell or cry. She just looked at him and said, I think we're done here. Then she walked to her office, calm and strong, and told her producer to handle him leaving. Officially, people said Korman left nicely, a star moving on to new things. But the people who were there knew the truth. It was like watching someone realize they've just been stabbed and seeing who was holding the knife, said a guest star. She looked shocked, then hurt, and then she was very calm as she let him go. She knew keeping him would ruin everything she built. What happened that day changed Burnett in quiet ways. She was still kind and stayed friends with other cast members, but people noticed she was more careful with people. Something in her changed after Harvey, said a longtime friend. Not anger, just awareness. She started watching how people acted under pressure. She looked for signs of a big ego or selfishness she might have missed before. And that's why Harvey Korman's name is on Carol Burnett's private list. Not just for his outburst, but for breaking her trust when he turned her stage into a place of betrayal. It was sabotage from a big ego disguised as frustration, her friends said. But if that showed how fragile friendship could be, the next hurt came not in private but in public. Cary Grant, the snob who made fun of her to her face. Cary Grant was the picture of class for movie fans. His nice suit, smooth voice, and easy charm made him the standard for Hollywood style. But people who knew Carol said her meeting with him showed a different man. A man whose polite outside hid a strong dislike for anyone he thought was below him. At an awards show, he openly insulted her show, recalled a former TV producer who saw it. In front of everyone, he said something that left Carol shocked. It showed that even Hollywood's most polite gentleman could be cruel when he thought no one would stop him. At a fancy awards show in the late 1960s or early 1970s, when Carol's show was very popular, a bad moment happened between Cary Grant and Carol Burnett. People who saw it said Grant made a mean comment where Burnett could hear him. He sneered, "Oh, that show, the one where she waves her arms and overacts." His tone made it clear the insult was on purpose, a try to make her style of comedy seem silly. It happened at a party before the ceremony. Carol was talking with some TV producers when Grant, standing nearby, heard someone praise her show's Emmy wins. That's when he said the cutting line loud enough for her to hear but said like a casual comment to others. People nearby said the mood changed instantly. Grant's words attacked Burnett's art, the physical humor that was her signature. By mocking it as just arm-waving, he wasn't just being rude. He was trying to ruin her whole way of doing comedy. Burnett, though, didn't look upset. Without raising her voice, she turned a little toward him and answered with easy grace. "Mr. Grant, some of us have to use our whole bodies to show feeling. We can't all just use one raised eyebrow." People in the crowd laughed nervously. Grant, looking uncomfortable, did not apologize. He just turned and walked away. People who saw it later said the exchange showed more about Grant than about Burnett. She handled an unprovoked insult with smarts and humor, while he, when challenged by a woman who wasn't afraid to talk back, chose to leave. Movie experts have said Grant was from an older Hollywood generation that looked down on TV, thinking it was a lower art form. Behind his smooth outside, he was said to be insecure about not having much school education or classic training. That insecurity may have made him look down on performers like Burnett, whose success came from raw talent and creativity. Even though she started out modestly, Carol Burnett actually had more formal theater training than Cary Grant ever did. Grant, for all his polish, had no structured education in performing. This might explain why he acted superior to her. What seemed like casual dislike that night was really a mask for his insecurity. Burnett had conquered TV, a world Grant had tried but failed to master. Her success showed how entertainment was for everyone, something old Hollywood elites often disliked. Grant's sneer at her arm-waving comedy was more than a personal insult, a friend once explained. It showed his snobby attitude toward women comedians and toward performers who weren't from rich backgrounds. The incident left a quiet mark. They were polite in public after, but people who knew them said there was always a little tension. Burnett never said bad things about Grant publicly, but later she sometimes talked about that moment when discussing the hard split between TV and film early in her career. She never forgot it, recalled a longtime colleague. Not because it hurt her badly, it didn't, but because it showed something ugly behind the charm. It showed her how much of Hollywood's elegance was really just a disguise. That meeting and others like it helped shape Burnett's view of the industry's morals. And Grant wasn't the only one to let her down. The next name on her list showed something much more scary. Marlon Brando, the charmer who went too far. Marlon Brando was a total legend. His real, raw performances in A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront and his famous role in The Godfather changed acting itself. By the 1970s, he was Hollywood royalty, powerful, magnetic, and above the rules. But people close to Burnett said that same power had a dark, predatory side. He called her at 3:00 in the morning, a longtime friend later said. At first he was nice, charming, then it got uncomfortable, creepy. He crossed every line. The late-night call happened in the mid-1970s when both were very famous. Burnett's show ruled TV and Brando was famous for The Godfather and Last Tango in Paris. They had met briefly at events, talked politely, nothing more. But that night, Brando took their distant relationship somewhere it should never have gone. The call started normally. Brando praised Burnett's comedy, suggested they work together, and spoke nicely about her career. But soon the tone changed. The compliments became personal, then suggestive, and then clearly sexual. It started with him liking her work, recalled a former assistant Burnett told later. Then he started talking about her looks, her voice, and soon it became outright sexual offers. Carol tried to change the subject to keep it professional, but he wouldn't stop. The more she said no, the more inappropriate he got. For a woman known for her class and composure, that call left a lasting mark. It was a scary reminder of how even the most powerful men in Hollywood felt they could cross lines without consequences. And that's why Marlon Brando's name is on Carol Burnett's private list of the most troubling people she ever met. The situation put Carol Burnett in a hard spot. As a woman in an industry where men had most of the power, saying no to someone as influential as Marlon Brando could hurt her career. Yet his words that night were so wrong that even Burnett's usual grace could barely hide her discomfort. She tried to end the call politely a few times, her former assistant recalled. But Brando just kept talking, pushing, getting more explicit, using his power to trap her in that late-night moment. It wasn't just inappropriate. It felt predatory, like he knew she couldn't safely fight back. The incident might have stayed a private bad memory, but soon details of the call spread through Hollywood gossip. What should have been a private moment for Burnett turned into public embarrassment. Instead of apologizing, Brando acted with arrogance that showed his true self, said a former publicist. Gossip writers twisted the story into a joke, making Brando's behavior seem like harmless flirting and making fun of Burnett for being uncomfortable. When reporters asked him about it, Brando made it worse. People there said when a journalist asked, Brando smirked and said, "Carol takes things too seriously. Some women just don't know the difference between appreciation and harassment." His careless comment didn't just ignore the situation, it blamed Burnett, making her seem too sensitive instead of admitting he did wrong. That reply told everyone exactly who he was, said a former CBS executive. He crossed a line, then used his fame to shame her for having boundaries. It was the classic move: act badly, then make the woman feel like she's the problem. For Burnett, it wasn't just the late-night call that stayed with her. It was the complete lack of responsibility afterward. Brando's refusal to admit fault and his public try to turn the story against her showed a cruelty she remembered for years. And that's why Marlon Brando's name is on her private list of Hollywood people whose true character she found very disturbing. Carol has always kept personal and professional things separate, explained a longtime colleague. What upset her most about the Marlon Brando situation wasn't just the call, it was how he publicly ignored her discomfort later. Brando's arrogance went beyond bad behavior. He used his fame as a weapon, twisting the story to make Burnett seem stiff or humorless for objecting to a 3:00 a.m. sexual proposition. That experience left a mark. People close to her say it changed how she dealt with Hollywood's power games, especially with men who used their influence without care. Though she kept working well with male colleagues, friends noticed a quiet change, a new tiredness in her manner. She became more careful in private talks, especially around men who showed any sign of Brando's entitled attitude. Why is he on her list? Because it was a sleazy power play with no responsibility. A moment where Brando used his status to cross a line, then tried to make her feel silly for reacting. Him gaslighting her in public sealed his place among the names she would never forget. But Brando wasn't the only old Hollywood star who shook her. Another name on her private list of people who wronged her was one of TV's most powerful figures, Lorne Michaels. When Saturday Night Live started in 1975, it changed American comedy. Michaels, as its creator and boss, decided who would get one of TV's biggest honors, hosting the show. Over the years, everyone from famous comedians to presidents had hosted, but not Carol Burnett. Even though she was hugely influential, she basically invented the modern sketch comedy format that SNL used. She was never asked to host. Multiple writers and cast members reportedly suggested her name over the years, but Michaels always said no. He said she wasn't the right spirit for the show, claimed a former *SNL* writer. That explanation never made sense to people who knew Burnett's work. Her humor, often bold and satirical, had pushed limits long before *SNL existed. Meanwhile, older comedians like Bob Hope and George Burns from even earlier times were welcomed as hosts. The difference was obvious. Burnett's exclusion felt deliberate, said one NBC executive. For decades, when fans asked why she never hosted, NBC gave vague excuses, scheduling problems, creative differences, which changed depending on who you asked. Over time, the snub became more meaningful. Hosting SNL wasn't just about being seen, it was cultural approval, a stamp on your legacy. As *SNL became the judge of comedy history, those who hosted were remembered as part of the comedy family. By keeping Burnett off the stage, Michaels was rewriting history, leaving out one of the very creators of modern sketch comedy. "It was an eraser," said a writer who worked with her in the 1970s. For decades, Carol said nothing. Then at a private dinner in 2023, she finally talked about it with quiet dignity. "I guess they didn't need me," she said with a soft smile. "But I didn't need them either." That simple comment carried the weight of a lifetime, admitting the insult but refusing to let it define her. That grace, that refusal to become bitter, is what really defines Carol Burnett. Her so-called list of the most evil people she met wasn't tea from small grudges. It was a moral judgment. The people on it had shown something basically cruel or corrupt. Some betrayed her trust. Others humiliated or used her. A few, like Grant and Michaels, showed the cold snobbery that once kept women and working-class talents from getting full credit. "Carol doesn't hold grudges," said a colleague who worked with her for decades. "She understands human weakness, but she also knows when cruelty crosses a line." For Burnett, success was never about power, it was about honesty. She had seen how fame could twist people, how charm could hide ego, and how laughter could be used as both a gift and a weapon. Yet through it all, she stayed true to herself. Her quiet strength was not just in her comic genius, but in her ability to face meanness without becoming mean herself. She could see darkness without turning dark. In an industry built on pretending, she stayed surprisingly real. And maybe that, more than any award, is her greatest legacy.